Good morning. My name is Mary Buelow, and I'm one of the librarians here at the Hedberg Public Library. Welcome to our program, Researching Your Family Roots. Every family has stories. Each family has a big story arc, how the family came to be at this place and when they came to be here, what they've done since they've been here. There's also smaller stories about what individual family members did within that story arc and how those individual family members lived. What was life like for them? Were they wealthy or just getting by? Did they get along with each other? Why did they make the choices they did? And how my ancestors' opportunities and their choices impact my life today. These stories are your family's roots. They tell you how you came to be and what forces helped shape you to be the person who you are. If you're curious about how you can find your family story, stick around. I'll be sharing strategies and tips so you can begin a search for your own family's roots. Getting started is easier than you might think. There are so many resources available right now in your own home through the internet that there has never been a better time to begin your search. During my time as a librarian, I've helped many people search for their family history. Some of these are people who are just starting out and they're beginning their search from scratch. They know who their parents are and their grandparents. They might know the names of their great-grandparents. But going back through their family tree, there are people that they know nothing about, and they want to know more. So they come to the library, they find a computer, they open up a genealogy program and plug in the name of the person they want to find, and they run into trouble. Then they come and find me, and we talk through their results and explore how they can search more effectively to find more ancestors with less time and effort. Let me show you what this looks like in a sample search. After that, we'll look at genealogy resources that you can use from your own home to research your own family. For our sample search, we will start with one of the genealogy resources available through the Hedberg Public Library, Ancestry Library. This is the library version of the well-known Ancestry.com database. It's a huge collection of genealogy resources and a great place for starting researching family history. When I click Begin Searching, it gives me a simple form. Now, I want to know more about my great-grandfather. I know really very little about him, and I'm curious. I want to know more. So I'll put in his first name, John, and his last name, Buelow. I don't know his birth year, so I'm going to leave that birth year off. I do know he lived in Wisconsin. I don't know what town, so I'll just put in Wisconsin, and then I click Search. What I've just done was a typical search for a beginner. And already I have some warning flags that this might not have been the best search I could have done. My first result, actually all my results, are for records for people named John Buelow. That part's good. But that first John Buelow, he died in 1917. That's not so good because my father was born in 1929 and his grandfather was still alive in 1929. So this John Buelow who died in 1917 is not the right one. The second result I'm looking, he was born in 1903. My grandfather was born in 1902. So this is clearly not his father. The third result is a John H. Buelow who was born in 1891. So he was alive when my grandfather was born, but he was 11 years old. So again, no. If I keep going down this list, I don't see any John Buelow who comes close to the right age until the bottom of page 2. That's more than 30 results down the list. And even then, it's not the right guy. This is the point where the researcher looks up and sees that there's 49,691 results. They say there's got to be a better way. They get up from their computer and they go find a librarian. And their librarian will tell them, yes, there is a better way. So let's try another search. This time, I'm going to search for my grandfather. I still have the same goal. I want to find my great-grandfather. But my librarian is telling me I don't have enough information to do a good search. I do have enough information about my grandfather to do a good search. And the first rule of genealogy is to start with what you know. So I enter my grandfather's name, first name Louis, last name Buelow. I type in his birth year, 1902, and then I start to type in a town he lived in, Chilton, and once I do that, it starts to give me some autofill options. One's in England, one's in Jamaica, and there's one in Wisconsin. The Wisconsin option actually adds in the county name. This is how Ancestry codes in the location for Chilton, Wisconsin in their database. I don't have to enter it the way what Ancestry does, but if I do, my search is better and I get less garbage in my results. So I'm going to click where it says Chilton, Calumet, Wisconsin. And I click search. And then I get results for Louis Buelow. And the results for my second search are much better. The top results are all matches. I'm looking, they are all my grandfather. The first result is for a Louis Buelow, and it's a World War II draft card. I can confirm this is my grandfather because the record lists a relative, Mrs. Evelyn Buelow. That's my grandmother. So now I've confirmed I have the right person. I want to see what new information I can find. If I mouse over the link for the draft card, Ancestry brings up more information about the record. And I've gotten 2 new bits of extremely useful information. The first is my grandfather's exact birth date. And the second is that he was born in Shawano County. This is an important clue. It means that if actually my grandfather was born in Shawano County, it's quite likely that my great-grandfather spent some time there as well. If I click on the image where it says View Image in the upper left, I can even see the original draft card. And now I'm getting down a genealogy rabbit hole. From here, I can learn that my grandfather's address at the time he was registered for the draft. I learn his telephone number, occupation. Well, it says self-employed. He was a farmer. I also have a physical description with height, weight, eye color, and complexion. And this information is not useful for my ultimate goal, which is finding my great-grandfather and learning that big story arc of my family. But it's really fascinating to know anyway because it helps me learn more about my grandfather's life and his story. But for now, we are on that quest to find my great-grandfather. So back at the search results here, let's see what else I can find out. The second result for Louis Buelow is something called Find a Grave. Let me click on that. The Find a Grave record lists birth year and death year. It also lists my grandfather's parents. I found John Buelow. I now know, well, I found a little piece of him. I now learned that his middle initial is F, and that is a very helpful clue. It really would have improved that first search that I did. And I can even find more information by going to the Find a Grave website proper. So Find a Grave is actually a separate service. It's free out on the internet. You don't need to access it through Ancestry. It does partner with Ancestry, which is how I found it through the database. The Find a Grave website, they recruit volunteers to go out to cemeteries all across the country and take photos of graves and upload those photos to the Find a Grave website. They also upload inscriptions from the tombstones and any other records that they might find. So I'm going to click on Go To Website to look at the full record. And on this record, the volunteers even typed out Louis' obituary. If I scroll down, they have also included links for Louis' family members, including his children. I can use those children's names to confirm that I have the record for the right person. The record also lists other family members. Remember, my goal was to find out more about my great-grandfather. This record does have links to Louis' parents, and if I click on John F. Buelow's name, let's see what I can find. And here he is, my great-grandfather, or what's left of him, as imaged on findagrave.com. We see a picture of his grave, information where it's located. We even see a scan of his obituary. This is actually the gold standard for genealogy. When something is retyped as it was on my grandfather's obituary, there's always risk of error. When I have an original, either paper or scanned, I have the real deal. So I'm really happy to see this original document. And John's obituary gives me a whole lot of new information. It tells me when he was born and that he was born in Germany. It gives the name of his wife, the date they married, the date his wife died, the names of his two sons. I knew one, I knew my grandfather. And it gives, John F.'s obituary gives the name of his brother and his three sisters. This obituary is definitely something I'm going to print off and keep with my family records. And this Find a Grave record gives me even more. It has links to records for my great-great-grandparents with their names and their birth dates. I was not expecting to find this today, but there they are. I found one more generation for my family. So that's an example of using a search, a sample search using some people from my Buelow family tree. But we're really not here to talk about my family. We're here so you can learn how you can find your own family roots. So where do you start? The first step is to find out what you already know. You know your name. That may seem obvious, but it's important. And unless you're adopted, you know your parents' names. You likely know their parents' names. You want to write it all down. Everything, even the obvious stuff. Because right now, your family is small enough you can keep everything in your head. But once you start genealogy, your family is going to grow. It'll be harder and harder and harder to keep track of everyone. If you write everything as you go, it'll save you a lot of time and frustration later on. You also want to talk to your relatives. Ask them about the family. Who do they remember? What do they remember? Take notes. And don't wait on this step. You will want to connect with your relatives when they are still alive. After they're dead, it's too late. You also want to connect with them when their memories are still sharp. The other thing you'll want to do is to check any family documents that might be available. Is there a family is there a family Bible? Do people keep birth records and death records for the family members? Has anyone started a genealogy research for the family? Ask if they'll share their notes with you. For each person in your family, you want to find key information, such as dates of significant events. We're talking about birth, marriage, death, divorce. These are all things that'll show up in the records in one way or another. We want to make notes of any nicknames, any alternate names, any alternate spellings. Many people change the spellings of their name or their entire name during their lifetime, or they might have it changed for them. This is true of both first names and last names. And for women, if they get married, it's really important to know their original birth name, their original family name, the maiden name. You want to make note of siblings and parents' names and locations where my ancestor lived. So these are all keys that will help you verify a record, that if that record is for your person or for someone else with the same name who's not related to you. You don't want to mix up your family with someone else's. It just doesn't help you understand your own family story. The next thing you want to do is to organize your family's information. As we saw with our sample searches, when you know the names of your research target's parents or spouse or siblings or children, you can cross-check to see if any new records match up, or if the record you found is for some other family. And we've also seen how important birth dates are. This is particularly true if it's a family tradition to name children after parents or other relatives. So if your last name is McCarthy in one part of your family tree, and in that family, every firstborn son is named James, you will have many people in your family tree named James McCarthy. The birth date, or at least the birth year, will help you know which James McCarthy fits where. Some genealogists organize their family tree by family information by creating a classic family tree like the one that we see here. Other people have binders or some other filing system with section dividers for each family unit and subsections for each individual. Any organization system is good, as long as you can find the information you need when you need it. Your next step is to dive into the records. Let's go over some major types of records available and how they can be useful to you. The first one's obituaries. This is a biggie. When someone dies, it's customary for a family to publish an obituary notice in the local newspaper. This obituary notifies the community that the person did pass away. It tells who the next of kin are so you can send their condolences, and shares information about funeral or memorial services. The obituary may also share the deceased's birth date and parents' names, their employer, their church or club affiliations, and some accomplishments. These are all excellent bits of information you can use for your research and to help you understand that family member a little bit better. Obituaries are typically published a few days after someone dies. So to find an obituary, I need to know the date of death and the town where that person lived. Once I have the information I need, my next step is to find a newspaper from that town from that time period. If the obituary is recent, I can look on the newspaper's website. Obituaries may stay on the newspaper website for several weeks or a few years, depending upon the newspaper. The website legacy.com collects obituaries from 1,500 newspapers for the last 20 years. This may be another place to look for recent obituaries. With family research, though, we typically need older newspapers. Some historic newspapers have been scanned into giant databases that are available by subscription service. The Badger Link Project subscribes to one of these databases, newspapers.com, and all Wisconsin residents can access it for free. I often find obituaries through newspapers.com for people. I will show you how to access this database at the end of the presentation. If you're looking for back issues of the Janesville Gazette, though, the Janesville Gazette is available on microfilm at the Hedberg Public Library. You can come to the library and view the microfilm yourself, or if you have the date the obituary appeared in the Gazette, or at least the date of death, contact the library and we can scan the obituary and email it to you. If your family member was from Janesville, but you don't know their exact date of death, you can check the Hedberg Public Library's Obituary Index. This covers obituaries and death notices from the Janesville Gazette from 1978 through 2019. In it, search for your family member by name. If they appear in the database, the index will show their death date, obituary date, and the name of their spouse. There's also a card file for the Janesville Gazette obituaries from 1907 and before, located in the library's Janesville room. And the Janesville room has more information and other resources for helping you find obituaries and researching your Janesville ancestors generally. If your ancestor is from another community, contact the public library in that town to see what resources they might have available. Depending upon that library's rules, they may be able to do some searching for you. More often, they will let you know what resources they have and suggest you submit an interlibrary loan request through your home library. If this happens, contact us at the Hedberg Public Library. You can submit an interlibrary loan request over the phone, by email, or at the main service desk. Tell us the title, author, and whatever other information you know about the item. If you're requesting a newspaper microfilm, we also need to know the date of the paper you need. You do need to be aware that the microfilm and most other genealogy materials borrowed through interlibrary loan are often restricted to use in the library and cannot be checked out. Vital records are another set of records that will be used for your search. Both birth and death records list the parents' names, including the mother's maiden name. And marriage records, of course, are an excellent source for finding a woman's maiden name. In Wisconsin, births, marriages, and deaths became mandatory to start registering these with the government October 1st, 1907. Before October 1907, it was not required to register these events, and the records are very incomplete. Here in Rock County, there are no marriage records at all before 1849. Birth records start in the 1860s, and death records start in 1873. Vital records are not public records, so they don't show up in database searches. The databases might have index to the death record, so you can see that the record exists and pull out some details that the records contains. But for the record itself, you typically need to request it from the state or county where the event actually happened. The rules for this do vary state by state. You typically must prove that you are an immediate family member. Since vital records are hard to get, you'll want to check your own family documents carefully. You may actually already have some in your possession. The census is another set of records. Every 10 years, the United States government, our government, conducts a census. They count every person living in the country with the end result that we know how many people live where, and from that we can create congressional and legislative districts based on population. At first, back in 1790, census takers just wrote down the names of the head of household and the number of people who lived there. Starting in 1850, they wrote down every single name. This means that we have a record of who lived in the United States and where they lived. Since the census is also organized by household, once we find one family member, we can find the names of everyone in that household. Then, when we search the next census or the prior census, we match up those names to confirm that we found the correct family. This helps us to track our family over time in 10-year segments. In addition, politicians have used the census to process to collect statistics about the American population. They've asked for about ages of residents, their occupations, education, veteran status, and in some years they've asked where people were born and where their parents were born. That can be very useful information. Right now, we only have access to the census name files through 1940. For the first 72 years after they are collected, census name files are sealed by law. Once the 72 years has passed, they become public records and are widely available on genealogy databases and on the National Archives website. The 1950 census will probably become available in around 2023 or so. So the census is fantastic, but it only happens once every 10 years. How can we track family members in the years between the census? So most cities have something called a city directory. This is a directory of all the businesses and residents in a city. In some places, the directories are published every year. In other places, maybe every 2 years, every 3 years. It's still more frequent than the census. You can search directories by name, and from there you find out where the person lived and usually their occupation or employer. Many older city directories have been digitized. The Hedberg Public Library has digitized Janesville city directories from 1857 to 1931, and we've made them available on our website. Some city directories are included in the big genealogy databases like the Ancestry Library database. So let's look at Ancestry again. This is where we started. And when we are looking for records online, it is a great starting point. It serves as a super search. It collects thousands of documents and historical records from multiple sources, many sources, and gathers them together in one place, and we can search them all at once. When you're using Ancestry, or actually any database, check out the advanced search options. On Ancestry, this is labeled in the Show Me More options. If you don't have a birth year or a location where your ancestor lived, you may be able to enter alternates, such as the name of a sibling, a parent, or a child. I'll show you how to get to Ancestry Library at the end of this presentation. But before we do that, I want to show you some other powerful search databases that are available to you. We've already looked at Find a Grave. This is free on the internet. Website is findagrave.com. You can just type that in, start searching. Family Search is another one that's free on the internet. It's a crowdsourced genealogy resource. And even though it is free, you do need to create an account to join, but there is no cost to it. It's available at familysearch.org. National Archives, definitely free. The National Archives is actually our nation's record keeper. If a document is created during the U.S. government's course of business and that document is judged important for long-term legal or historical reasons, it's stored in the National Archives. This includes census records and other documents useful to genealogists. You can find the digital National Archives at archives.gov. Heritage Quest, which is also known as Heritage, is Ancestry's smaller cousin. It's available to Wisconsin residents through the BadgerLink project. You can access it through badgerlink.net or through the Hedberg Public Library's Research Databases page. I will show you how to access the library's online resources in just a few minutes. So, with the strategies and resources we've covered today, a significant number of Americans can track their family roots back to their immigrant generation or to 1850, whichever's later. But it's not foolproof. There are known circumstances where these strategies and resources won't work. Here are some of the challenges you might find. We've already mentioned before 1850. Before that, the census only recorded the head of the family. Wives and children were not named. That can create some issues in going before 1850. For ancestors who immigrated from other places, we need to switch from American resources and records to the records, resources of the old country. For my family, that means that all the records from Germany, from the German principalities, will be written in German, which I don't speak. That's going to be a challenge for me when I get to that point. Sometimes the people don't move, but the borders do. If your ancestor lived in areas of Mexico that were eventually annexed to the United States, such as Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, then for the dates before annexation, you will be working with Mexican resources. If your ancestors lived in a part of Europe where borders changed frequently, you will need to keep track of what country governed your family's home for which years to determine what records you want to check. And each country records their population in different ways. Every time I switch countries, I need to learn a whole new set of documentation and search strategies. Natives were generally not included in the regular census or official documentation before 1900. Before that, your native ancestor would only appear in United States documents if your ancestor paid taxes and ended all tribal affiliations. For enslaved ancestors, there's a double whammy here. There's actually many whammies here. First, immigration was not voluntary, so there's absolutely no orderly documentation at all from the old country to the new. Second, if documents do exist, they will record your ancestors as property rather than people. This means tracking ancestors who were enslaved require a special set of tools. Illegal immigration is another issue. It's not new. I have a friend whose Irish ancestor walked across the border from Canada to Montana sometime in the 1870s or 1880s. They're not really sure. They know that he did it because they can find the records in Canada, they can find the records in the United States, and there is no official record of immigration. If no documents are created, there are no documents to find. My friend knows about this migration through family stories. So this is another reason why tracking those family stories is so important. Sometimes it's the only information you have. And then there's people out there who just don't participate in the census or register marriages or other activities that leave a document trail. If no documents are created, there's no document to find. If you hear any of these issues as you're gathering your family stories, take note. You will need some specialized search techniques to research that specific family member. Once we go to that next level, search strategies become more diverse and the resources are more specialized. I wish we could cover more in today's webinar, but each of these specialties really deserves its own program. If you want to learn more, check our library catalog for books and other resources for specialized genealogy searches and techniques. If you have German ancestors and you want to track your family back to the old country, we did a program on that specifically last spring. Check out the program Find Your German Ancestors, which was recorded at the Hedberg Public Library on February 4th, 2020. It is available on YouTube. You may also want to join your local genealogy society where you can share tips with other genealogists. Someone else may have experienced and gotten past the same sort of barrier that you are facing right now. And as always, ask your librarian for help. We are here to help you. During this presentation, I mentioned several resources available online through the Hedberg Public Library. Before we end for today, let me show you how you can access them from home. Ancestry Library and newspapers.com, also the Heritage Quest that I mentioned, are all available on the Research Databases page of our website. To find them, start at our homepage, hedbergpubliclibrary.org. Click on Research Tools. That's on the blue bar that runs near the top of the page. Once you click on Research Tools, click on Research Databases. The Research Databases page lists all the subscription resources available to Hedberg patrons for free with their library card number. Newspapers.com is near the bottom of the page under the category of magazines, newspapers, and periodicals. Newspapers.com is free to Wisconsin residents through the Badger Link project. Once you click on newspapers.com, you may have to type in your library name and library card number. Ancestry Library is all the way at the bottom of the page, along with Heritage Quest. So under People, Biography and Genealogy, Ancestry Library's first, then Heritage Quest. For Heritage Quest, that's the same as newspapers.com. All Wisconsin residents can access it with their Wisconsin library card. Ancestry Library is normally only available if you come into the library, sign on to a library computer, and then access Ancestry Library from the library computer. However, during the COVID emergency, the company has given us permission to let you use this resource from home. When you click on the link, it will ask you for your Hedberg library card number and PIN to verify that you are a member of the Hedberg Public Library. Ancestry Library will be available from home at least through the end of September 2020. After that, the company will look at conditions within the pandemic to see if another extension is needed. I mentioned the Obituary Index for the Janesville Gazette. That is listed on our local history page. In order to find our local history page, we'll go back to our homepage, or actually any page. And up at the top of the page, there's that same Research Tools button. Go ahead and click Research Tools. That button is actually available from all pages on our website. When we're in Research Tools, scroll all the way down till you see the popular subjects. One of them is local history. Click on Local History, and that will take you to our local history page. The Obituary Index is near the top of all the resources, along with our local history database and our high school yearbook database. You will also find the link to our Janesville's Past resources on our local history page. This is where you can find resources the library has digitized through various projects, including those digitized copies of the Janesville City Directories from 1857 through 1931. If you have questions using any of these resources, or if you have any other questions with your genealogy research, ask your librarian for help. You can call 758-6600 to consult on your genealogy questions, or you can email us at questions@hedbergpubliclibrary.org. Our temporary COVID hours are Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Have fun and enjoy your search for your family roots.